All right, welcome everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, thank you for joining us. We will be talking about modernization of the service desk, and that's going to be a combination of, I think, an advancement on some of the traditional tools that you've probably put in place or used in the past, but also integrating AI and automation. And I think that there's been a lot of evolution in the products, which also allows quite a bit of evolution for you and your service desk. So first, we're going to talk about the least important slide in this presentation. This is my introduction. My name is Andrew Graff. I'm the Chief Product Officer here. I will leave it at that. I'm also joined by my colleague, Tiffany Linhart, who's actually going to walk us through a demonstration later to take some of the concepts we talk about and give you a visual on those concepts. And that the purpose of that is a couple-fold. Number one, some people are visual learners. And number two, it will help you get ideas maybe for whatever solution you currently have in place to see if you can use it for that. And if you are shopping, it will also help you maybe create a checklist of things to look for. So moving on, when we think about service management, we think about the types of products and tools, capabilities that help you evolve to meet your business demands. That could be demands coming from the type of support you need to provide, also demands coming from your CFO about your budget. And what Team Dynamics does is we provide enterprise service management software, work management software paired with AI and advanced automation, right? To give you a path to evolve to where you would like to be. So full featured suite, clients pick and choose what they need, but we can typically provide a really nice evolution path. And by the way, it's no code. So you no longer have to rely on software developers, people who know how to write scripts, etc. So with that, we go ahead and move on to some market research that is going to be the foundation for this presentation. And one of the ways that we like to understand the market is clearly talking to customers, but also putting market research out there, reaching a far wider audience than just our customer base. And what you're seeing here is a result of a recent study that we did talking about the challenges, objectives that IT service leaders had. And so I think what's most critical in this, and I think you're all going to agree, that the number one challenge that they're facing is just budget pressure and resource constraints. So 100% of people responded saying that they felt like they did not have the resources or budget to meet the ever increasing demand. So we have a proliferation of technology. You have departments who can go out and use a credit card or under their buying authority, buy a piece of software and show up at your doorstep and say, hey, we'd really like you to support this. That's happening everywhere. Now, as you look around, the other things that folks were focused on, number one, I'll start in the top right, was AI-enabled self-service. So how do we reduce the number of inbound requests when we have information, knowledge, or content that can help answer those questions? Right? How do we enable the organization to serve that to customers so it reduces the burden on IT, yet maintains a high level of customer satisfaction? Moving around, we get to automation. So automation is really focused on executing on requests or processes that help fulfill a need for a customer. And where I think the really powerful combination is when you combine AI with automation, where AI doesn't just answer questions, it can actually start fulfilling requests. That's where you see an incredible improvement in resource drain. And what also is interesting is this is, again, becoming no code. So you no longer have to cobble together a lot of software, handwritten code, scripts, etc., infrastructure to maintain all of it. And then lastly, up in the upper left is focused on productivity gains around improving the services that we offer. And that is, strangely enough, isn't necessarily directly related to service management. It's about how we plan and prioritize projects to simplify how we deliver service, to improve how we deliver service. And the reason that it says productivity gains is because, projects sometimes are parachuted into IT groups and they get distracted from being able to make improvements. So with good project portfolio management, the prioritization process, the resource allocation process can really make sure that we have the time and budget to do the top priority projects. We're not getting distracted by hobbies. Okay. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier, but this is going to be an interactive presentation. So if you're sitting there eating your lunch, looking at your phone, etc., we are going to have some questions. So here's the first one. The first one is, where are you on a maturity scale? And you can read, it's just foundational, mature, and advanced. Your gut reaction is fine. Don't overthink it too much. But with foundational, you have basic self-service, right? You have maybe a basic knowledge base, some workflows, project intake. You might have adopted some of the ITIL practices. Mature is where you're starting to expand outside of IT. You might have implemented a change management process. Um, you might have implemented a change management process, and you might have some advanced workflows and be integrating systems to personalize content. And then advanced is where you have enterprise automation, where we are optimally automating processes. We have AI self-service set up and fully operational, and we're using again, automated self-service. So go ahead and take a minute, fill this out. I'll give you all a couple more seconds. Good participation today. It looks like we have a quorum here. And let me share the results. So interestingly, we have the largest cohort is in the foundational cohort, and then mature, no advanced. So I think that's good to hear. I think you're in the right place to have at least the opportunity to take away some ideas. Okay, so if we think about self-service, I'm going to start there and think about how do we elevate self-service given the most recent innovations or capabilities in technology. The one thing that I want to talk about is the state of conversational AI. When we did a study with Information Week, 76% of the respondents said that they were frustrated with their chatbot experience, right? And I think we've all had that experience. I had that with my bank. A couple years ago, they introduced a chatbot and it literally couldn't answer a single question, even the most basic questions. So I never used it again. Well, what has really changed about this is that no longer do conversational AI platforms need to be completely manually trained, where we need to anticipate all the questions and then load in what the answer should be. It was really kind of a glorified search where you're using natural language processing to figure out what somebody wants, then try to pair it with a pre-built piece of content. That's changing, and I'll get into some of the specifics on that. But and by the way, I think there is a time and place for what we call intent-based conversations, which is what I was just talking about. But the technology for consuming and essentially ingesting knowledge that exists, or ingesting knowledge as your organization builds it, it evolves, it continually updates and ingests that content, and it can pick and choose out of that body of knowledge, whether it's from a PDF, website, a team dynamics client portal, another source. It can pick and choose exactly what kind of questions or the content it uses to answer a question. So no longer will it say, hey, here is an entire knowledge base article that will help you answer this. It'll say, hey, here is the text, here is the specific text that will help you answer this. So I think the old conversational AI platforms that were so frustrating, they're kind of dying off. So before we jump into a little more about conversational AI, another poll. Are you using AI today within the context of self-service? Right? Not at all. No, but we have plans. Yes, a little bit, and we are totally optimized. We feel like we have exactly what we need, exactly what we need for the time being. And I'll give you all a little time here to respond. And these questions help us frame up, where you are in your maturity scale, and we can adjust the content and our talking points a little bit depending on what the group complexion is. Okay, so go ahead and share. So it looks like we have the biggest group is we don't have plans at all. We aren't using it today. We aren't using it today, but we have plans and we're using it a little bit. So that's good. And again, I think the technology is becoming a lot easier to get value out of. So let's talk about some of the things that have improved, right? Number one, the first thing is that the ability to understand natural language has become a lot more powerful, right? NLP or NLU or CLU, a lot of the different vendors have different names for it, has evolved quite a bit, especially with the advent of Gen AI, which has really taken the place of what you used to. It's essentially stepped in as the new and improved version of natural language processing and understanding. That's improved quite a bit. The other is that the ability to pair the request or the nature of what somebody's looking for with a known answer, or the ability to discover an answer, has improved quite a bit. And then the last piece, which I think is probably the most important, is that there's a lot of frustration because many requests are not just a simple answer. They require gathering information about the person asking, retrieving information from one-to-many other systems, or taking action in one-to-many systems. So the real magic, and I mentioned this earlier, is when you can combine conversational AI to figure out what somebody wants, and then use automation to retrieve information to personalize that conversation, or automate the response, automate the fulfillment of that request. That is where we see the most important gains. And I think that's where the technology has advanced mostly. So really, really important. So if we're thinking about the important checklist items around conversational AI, and you notice I don't use the word chatbot, because conversational AI is broader than chatbot. Chatbot is one channel for conversational AI. So what's important is that conversational AI can reach your users where they are, right? If your users are on your website, great. Chatbot's excellent. We have a lot of clients using Teams. So that's where people are working. That's where they have questions. So the chatbot's bolted into Teams, SMS, email, even using conversational AI as a service, meaning imagine an API where you can enable conversational AI on any product or any interface. You're essentially passing information to that API and it is retrieving information for you. So lots of channels. Secondly is RAG, right? Many of you may have heard of this, but rather than typing out what that stands for, I thought I'd just talk about it. This is probably the neatest advancement recently to help organizations have a valuable conversational AI solution quickly. It stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So what that means is that you're using generative AI to build a response, but it is augmented by the retrieval of information from outside a large language model. So many of you probably have accounts with ChatGPT, or Anthropic, or whatever, all of the myriad Llama, the myriad of LLMs. LLMs are really good at general things, right? If you have a question about how to do something in Teams, like for example, add an app to Teams, the LLM has that in its training data. Where it really falls down is where the answer to a question is not something that is broadly available on the web, or it's very contextual to your organization. So that's where retrieval augmented generation comes in. This is that ingestion capability. So as an example, many of our clients, when they start, they say, we don't have an incredibly well-formed knowledge base. We have knowledge over here in a wiki. We have knowledge on our website, multiple websites. We have knowledge contained in PDF documents, Word documents, Excel documents. We have we have this knowledge everywhere. And the thought of having to catalog all that knowledge, bring it into a central knowledge base just to stand up conversational AI is a little overwhelming. So what retrieval augmented generations allows you to do is create what are called knowledge sets. So you might say, all right, I want to create a knowledge set that includes all of my Team Dynamics client portal information, all the knowledge base articles, all the services. I also want it to include information maybe from a government regulation website. I want it to include our employee handbook, which is a PDF document. You know, the list goes on. And basically what it does is it takes that information on a periodic basis, ingests it into what's called a vector database, right? Vector database essentially makes the data easily retrievable by generative AI. That's not exactly how it works technically, but if you think it at a high level, what it's doing is essentially serving it up. So when you ask a question to a generative AI tool, it can say, oh, you know what, let me look in the vector database and see if there's something there. And then Gen AI will pull that information and package it up in a human-like answer. That's probably the biggest advancement. And that's very, very cool technology. It really wasn't viable until about a year ago. I mean, people were saying that they did it, but when you looked under the covers, it was kind of, it was kind of a twine and duct tape together on the back end. But now that is actually really good technology. The other thing to look for is the ability to actually build conversation flows. Well, when might you do that? Well, let's say somebody has a question about their PTO balance, right? You're going to want to say, if somebody wants something from their about their PTO balance, well, we need to make sure they're authenticated. So one thing to make sure that your conversational AI platform can do is authenticate users. That's one of the big differentiators we have, is we make it easy so that they can say, hey, in order to get your PTO balance, you need to authenticate. Sign in, and it says, okay, hey, Andrew, your PTO balance as of today for this year is 25 hours of PTO, whatever it is, and it's pulling that from Workday. That's really, really important. That would be an intent-based conversation. So the next point, integrate with backend systems. I just gave you an example of that. Another thing that's important is that if you're thinking about collecting information, let's say somebody wants to create a request. Yes, conversational AI can go through and ask every single question that would be on a form, but I think we've all been part of that, and that's very frustrating. So when the time's right, good conversational AI platforms allow you to pop out a form to actually gather information. Sometimes that's the right data collection mechanism, and we think it's really important because the whole concept of, hey, well, if we don't have an answer, we can help somebody submit a request. Think about the fields you want to know about and asking individual questions. It takes forever to do that, and it's frustrating for the user. And then the last one here is take action from the conversation. So my early example was, I want to know how much PTO I have. The next question conversational AI might ask is, would you like to submit for PTO? If we do that, we say, okay, yes, I do. I'd like to submit a day next Monday. Well, automation and good integration helps you do that. So really important. And I think the one thing that isn't on here, I think that authentication is absolutely critical to actually make all of this work. So a couple examples of when AI meets with integration automation, changing a name or address, changing a permission in Active Directory. I mentioned PTO balance inquiries, equipment replacement. So imagine someone says, hey, can I get a new laptop? Checks their asset record. Yep, you're eligible. Here are your options. What would you like? Walks them through that process. Password resets, software requests. These are all things we see customers doing where it's pairing AI with automation to save a lot of time. These are requests that their team members no longer have to deal with. And part of that goes to what a customer calls automating the toil. So where we see opportunity is when our best customers anyway, when they say, okay, there is a process where the customer is frustrated because it takes too long. They have to wait for people, and it really annoys our team members. It requires them just essentially to man a mouse. They're just a mouse jockey. That's it. They're not using their gray matter at all. They're not conversing with the customer. They're not trying to figure out what happened in a particular instance. So what's really interesting is that same study that we did indicated that the average IT team member spends 2 to 3 months a year doing these types of things. Think about getting that back for these team members. The other thing that was interesting is 89% of those who responded said that this toil, this mundane work, contributes to attrition. So people leave their jobs because this is so boring and frustrating. So this has a huge impact potentially on the bandwidth for your team and also the satisfaction of your customers. I spoke with a client of ours not too long ago and didn't have a huge IT team, and they were saving about 100 hours a month. And what he said was the interesting thing is that customer sat has gone up and employee sat has gone up too. So I think there's some pretty exciting opportunities here. So we have another poll. All right. Think if you had a magic wand, what would you automate? Right? Just think about the most painful activities that you're thinking, gosh, if we could automate this, that would be amazing. It would save us a lot of time or frustration or reduce customers being ticked off. I really appreciate everyone participating. This is very helpful. Interesting. I am going to go. It looks like we have a lot of people responding. I'm going to go ahead and end this and share results. So this is really interesting, right? I am not surprised by password resets. I'm not surprised by what I see here. Onboarding, offboarding is often where people start because what we find is that process is widely hated by everyone involved, and it involves multiple departments. It's not just a simple, hey, I just need to go in and get this done myself. It involves facilities, it involves IT, it involves HR, it might involve legal, it might involve security, and trying to coordinate all of that so that your team member starts and has a great experience is a pain in the tail. So widely hated. If we do a good job of automating it, people like it. And what I like about that scenario is anytime you automate something that's hated and everyone involved with that process is either neutral, no change in satisfaction, or they're happier, that's a win. That's important also because it builds momentum. It starts people thinking, wow, this is so much better. What else could we automate? And I think that that's really amazing when that happens. So this is good. I think, and I think all of these things can be very frustrating as well. Good. Close. So the next step here is thinking about service management more broadly, right? We think a lot about IT service management. I'm guessing a lot of you on this conference are IT practitioners, but service is typically delivered all over the organization. And enterprise service management seeks to provide efficiencies and improved customer and employee satisfaction in non-IT groups as well as IT. And plus, these teams collaborate a lot together. So it's also frustrating when one team is working out of email and they need something from you, you're working out of formal requests in a system. That's frustrating, right? It slows processes, makes them error prone, etc. So enterprise service management is an incredibly powerful way to help other departments. And as you look at these departments, if you think about those that think about those that don't have a formal system, or maybe you built the system and have to maintain it. And if they want a field change, somebody has to go in and code it, right? They complain about needing to use email or spreadsheets. You have to participate in their processes, and it's cumbersome. The second thing to think about that helps identify candidates. The second thing to think about is which ones are frustrated themselves, which ones wish they had a better way, where is the greatest pain experienced. Often we find HR is one of the largest service-oriented parts of your organization. There's often a lot of frustration there. They're getting lots of requests. They have lots of work to manage, right? And if they don't have a great system for it, it is frustrating. Now, on the other end, we see many times facilities, they might even be using paper-based systems. they may not be open to change initially. Now, substitute any of the departments into either of those situations based on your organization. But often what we see is when you start with, for example, human resources, what happens is IT starts to become consultative to the rest of the organization. So we have clients who have essentially built, process consulting groups within IT to go out and help organizations implement better service management. Once one non-IT department does it, some of the others look around, and often what happens is say, hey, we could use that, and we could use that. And eventually the departments who can benefit from it implement it. I think our largest customer has 200 departments running service through Team Dynamics. Our largest enterprise service management customer anyway. Now, there's one thing that I think is really important about this, and that's this top point. So being able to create what we call service applications. So IT would have a service, one-to-many service applications, HR would have a service application, legal would have a service application. Being able to create and maintain those without coding, really important. And the reason isn't that it's easier for IT to create them. The reason is that it allows those departments, once they're up and running, to own it. What we have found, and this was an early lesson learned for us years and years ago, was that we don't know a single IT group who says, I would love to have another thing to maintain and take care of. I would love it. I've never heard that from a customer. So what this does is IT is the consultant, but then HR, if they need a field added to a form, they can do it. They want to change a workflow, they can do that too. They want to add a service to their client portal, they can do that too. Really, really important for the sanity and workload of IT. Now, a couple other things to think about. Being able to create multiple portals. And when we say portal, that means knowledge-based service request catalog. We find sometimes that an organization, HR might have their own portal and they don't want to give that up. Fine, create your own portal, but it can all roll up into a one-stop type portal. Being able to create custom forms, workflows, the ability to automate, the ability to integrate, to pull information, that knowledge base, custom portal design, and then conversational AI. So if you have a conversational AI solution, for example, the Team Dynamics conversational AI platform, each department can have their own conversational AI. We call it a bot, but you can also have bots inherit knowledge from other bots. So you might say, okay, we have a Teams channel for HR support. We have a bot to answer questions. But what if somebody gets a question to answer about HR? Hey, what's my PTO balance? Hey, it's 40 hours. Great. You know what? I'm having a problem with my laptop. Well, you can train the HR bot to say, well, you know what, I can answer IT questions too. And it will essentially allow that question to transfer into the right bot. So just some things to think about. Now, we have another poll. How are you using enterprise service management today? And here's just an example on the right. So onboarding, offboarding, lots of departments, spills and accidents, demo requests for sales, reporting a quality issue, training requests, HVAC issues, requests for catering or room assignments, media reservations, AV setups, things like that. These are all things we see from the customer base. So the poll is, are you using enterprise service management today? Not at all. 1 to 2 groups, 3 to 5, or tons of groups, right? We feel like we're really cooking with gas when it comes to enterprise service management. And there is no I get the question sometimes like, well, how many departments should we have on enterprise service management? What indicates success? For one of our clients, that's 200. For some of our others, it's 3. That's optimal, right? So it really varies depending on the organization. All right, let me go ahead and share this. So it looks like the largest group, 1 to 2 groups, that's good. Second largest, not at all. So again, maybe some things to think about. And then we have some who I would consider are just rolling right ahead with 5+ groups. So pretty good representation. It's interesting. We've done these webinars, similar webinars for a while, and that 5+ group is growing. It was 2 or 3% a year ago. So I think that with the advancements in technology being easier to own, that this and products being set up for it, so you don't have to strangle the product and make it work. I think that that's important. Okay. All right. So I've talked a lot. The concepts are important, but I think probably the most important thing is putting a visual on it to reinforce some of these concepts and give those visual learners ideas as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it to what I believe will be your favorite part of this webinar, Tiffany walking us through some of these concepts.
Yeah, all right. So Andrew has covered a lot when it comes to our conversational AI platform, and it's up to me now to paint a picture with some of that. So I'm going to share my screen today, and we're going to be taking a look at that conversational AI platform within the Team Dynamics environment. And like Andrew mentioned, one of the first and most important things to think about is how you're going to meet the people that you're supporting where they are. And so the types of channels that you have available can be really important in that strategy. We're looking right now at our client portal, which is going to be that area where folks can communicate with end users, take in requests, share knowledge. And one of the channels available for conversational AI is going to be that web channel. Now, the web channel can be shared across a wide variety of websites, but often folks, of course, are going to be placing it in that one-stop shop that people are coming to get help and support. Down here at the bottom, we can have an icon that is, of course, configurable. And keep in mind, really, everything we're looking at today is configurable, as Andrew mentioned, using that no code or low code platform to make sure that it's easy to deliver and maintain. Once I open up my conversational AI chatbot here, you can see that we'll get started with a welcome message. And right off the bat, that's our opportunity to proactively communicate with folks, set expectations, share about outages that we're managing by leveraging some of those behind the scenes integrations that we've been talking about. Maybe guide a user to particular things that we think might be useful for them. But of course, they can also free form it, type in, and converse with the bot in order to get their problems solved. One of the fastest ways to get value is by leveraging that information you already have today, whether it's in a Team Dynamics knowledge base, tickets, documents that you have stored somewhere, or even a website. You can use that retrieval augmented generation Andrew was mentioning, point it to those areas, and allow you to provide answers to folks. So, for example, if I want to come in here and ask it to tell me about team dynamics, we'll copy paste in that question and it'll leverage the information from the Team Dynamics website to generate a response for me. So I have not had to do any real configuration other than to point it to that website in order to generate answers quickly for the people that I work with and support. Of course, this is a silly example. So something a bit more technical, we can say, hey, I need help with our Wi-Fi. And if necessary, the bot can converse a little bit further to get that clarity automatically to help understand what it needs to do to provide an answer and a response to this question. Now, we can also, of course, come in and ask for things to be solved automatically for us. And so that's where we can really take things to the next level by saying things like, what is my PTO balance? I can connect to my balance within the back end and pull in that information. But of course, in order to do that, I need to authenticate first. We need to know who I am. So tying authentication into that conversational AI chatbot can be a key part of that. I can then pull in that PTO balance and further personalize the conversation today. We can leverage things beyond PTO metrics and be able to say things like, I need a new laptop. Now I can connect to my asset information that I have within the system, determine that I'm eligible for a new laptop, and then go ahead and start creating a ticket in order to get that process started. So we can hand things off to the people or the humans to handle the more manual stuff. And along those same lines, it's really helpful if we can solve problems for folks right away. So if I'm locked out of my account, I'll say my account is locked. We can again clarify a little bit further what sort of help somebody needs. And then because I'm already signed in, we can reach out and unlock that account for somebody right off the bat. As we've been looking here today, we've seen a number of different ways that we can solve problems for people. either by leveraging information that we already have in order to generate responses and answers for people, or by leveraging authentication and integration in order to directly solve things for people. Do more than just answer their questions, actually start fulfilling the requests, taking some of that burden and toil off ourselves and our teams in order to ensure that we're delivering great service and really focusing on the work that people need to be problem solving and addressing. I'll hand things back to Andrew now.
Great, thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate it. Let's go jump back in. So when you think about what we're talking about, it's really thinking about synchronizing the enterprise. And that means connecting the processes and people internally, as well as all the systems required to execute your business processes. And that's where we think there's a lot of value to be had, as you saw with Tiffany's walkthrough of the Team Dynamics platform. So when you think about it, right, and the way we look at it is, if you have a single platform that can coordinate the business processes for IT service management, right, your ITIL processes and the processes for non-IT, also coordinate your self-service, including AI, and then also help you manage the non-service work with an underlying layer of integration automation, that becomes really, really powerful. And that's the strategy we've done well with. Okay, so we have time for some questions. There was a question, if the content returned using retrieval augmented generation would reference where it came from. And that, in Team Dynamics anyway, it's an option to show your references, and then somebody can click in and figure out where that content had come from. There's another question about what is the adoption rate for conversational AI as just shown. Well, when somebody purchases it, the adoption rate with retrieval augmented generation is incredibly high. I don't have an exact number. The more advanced use cases are when you start to personalize conversations with integration and automate fulfillment with automation. That's lower in adoption just because it's usually a next step in evolution there. And I don't have exact numbers, but what will typically happen is clients will say, hey, first thing we want to do is be able to answer the questions that we get 80% of the time, right? There's usually a handful of them. You can look at your ticketing data to identify those trends, right? You can feed your ticketing data to generative AI and say, hey, pretend you're an IT analyst and identify the nature of the top 20 requests. I would use a private instance of that so your data doesn't get shared, by the way. Don't just pass that into your free OpenAI account. The second part of that, is then saying, okay, we're going to make sure we have content for that, whether we ingest it or create it. And we want to make sure that if the conversational AI platform can't find an answer, that it's really easy to get action taken. So in our tool, you have the ability to pass it to a live agent, or you can create a ticket, right, through the conversational AI platform. From there, once that's set up, that's usually phase one, then we start saying, okay, where can we get value out of automation and integration? When you do that trending analysis of your ticketing, and we help clients do this, but you can do it too on your own. You can figure out, okay, which ones really require automation or integration, right? Integration to pull information from another system, or automation to take steps. Then you can look at prioritize those and take action. So there's definitely a phased approach. Someone asked, let's see, can we add infrastructure requests like a VM database server? Yeah, absolutely. We have clients doing that as well. Again, what you want to make sure is that whatever solution you're using for provisioning your VMs or your databases, that you have a good API for that, or there's a connector for that to do that. So yes, you can do that. Let's see, more questions. Someone asked, are there pre-built integrations available? Yes, we have several hundred of them on the back end. Let's see. Somebody asked, I think this is a client asked, how can we look at integrating conversational AI and automation in TDX? And yes, reach out to your Team Dynamics rep, and they can walk through that process, what that looks like. Let me see. So another question, if we don't synchronize with other internal systems, is the AI just sourcing knowledge, content, or can it learn source from tickets? Can it enter a ticket on behalf of a user chatting? So the answer to that is it depends on what you want to load into your knowledge sets. Um, many times with ticketing data, some cleaning is necessary because it depends on how thorough your techs or agents are at documenting what they've done and what the answers are, rather than just it's closed. Um, because the response is only as good as the data provided. Now, what I do see is that for general IT questions, let's say you're a G Suite shop or an Office 365 shop, you can create a knowledge set from their support sites. And so it can answer, all the questions about those suites. So there are some ways to, I guess, make it quote unquote more knowledgeable as well. And I think I might have answers, but yes, it can create tickets on behalf of people. Let's see. Okay, somebody asked, are building automation workflows easy in Team Dynamics? Just click and drag. So it is a point, click, and key interface, is what my old colleagues like to call it. I will say that depending on what you're integrating with, it does help to have knowledge of the other systems, to know what they're capable of. And also it helps if somebody has some experience doing sysadmin, maybe a little PowerShell. You don't have to be a software developer, but sometimes if you're building in, let's say you're using regex, or you want to transform data as part of it, right? It helps to understand some of that. So it's not, I wouldn't say I wouldn't put somebody in front of integration automation who wasn't in the technology, in the sphere of technology, right? Or hadn't had sysadmin experience. But it is, in relative terms, it is easy to do, right? It is no code. Let's see here. Lots of good questions. Let's see, sorting through them. Some keto so I can get to other ones. Somebody said for building AI, would this be a combination of using workflows and integration platform as a service? So with AI, with conversational AI, it's its own solution. It has a lot of capabilities of the integration automation platform built in for the purposes of personalizing conversations or automating requests right from there. So it leverages some of the foundational capabilities of the integration and automation platform. So basically, you get a twofer. You get conversational AI, and then you get capabilities of integration automation platform as they relate to AI conversations. You don't have all the system to system and automation capabilities, which what you normally think of with enterprise automation. But if an automation or data retrieval um, is required for a conversation, then yes, that's part of it. And it looks like, and I apologize, some of the requests aren't necessarily clear to me, so I'm not going to try to tackle those. But it looks like those were all the questions. Tiffany, did I miss anything? Anything you think I should have added to any of my responses?
I think you got it all. I would just add if you're a Team Dynamics customer today and you have additional questions about how to access this or how to leverage it, definitely reach out to your customer success team because they can definitely provide you a lot of those answers as well.
So, well, thank you, Tiffany, and thank you everyone for attending. So we will adjourn for today. And we do these webinars monthly. If you miss something or have colleagues who want to attend, we will be doing something similar. So everyone take care.